No Rest for the Wicked is a game I've been interested in for a while now. A game described as an action RPG with Souls-like combat seems interesting. So when Moon Studios reached out and asked me to do a sponsored video, I was like, obviously, yeah. So I'm gonna do that. Today, the mission is simple. I'm gonna explain what exactly No Rest for the Wicked is and why it has one of the most unique takes on the Souls-like formula I've ever seen. Buckle up and strap in, we're going on an adventure. To give some context to the game, you're playing as a Serum, a mystical warrior who fought to overcome the pestilence, a plague which has once again returned. And the intro to this game captures something I want to highlight: the art style. I've always been a sucker for good animations or pretty paintings, and this game has that in abundance. All the textures are hand-painted, and it gives the game a level of character that I often find lacking in most titles. I'm a big believer that the right art direction way outclasses the newest, most realistic graphics, so off rip, I'm a huge fan of the style. Moving on from that, my initial impressions of the combat and movement were that they felt very clean. You have 3 attack options: regular, charged, and an alternate combo attack. Initially I was just spamming regular attacks, but there is a lot of fluidity and room to blend these together as you get comfortable with weapon movesets, and it becomes very satisfying. There are also the Souls staples of dodge rolls and parries to avoid attacks. The dodge roll system operates on the usual light, normal, heavy rolls based on how heavy your character's equipment is. One thing that is changed is that the heavy roll comes with a shoulder charge ability. I really liked this. Making it so there's a bit of a benefit for creating a massive tank character that can't roll well incentivizes alternate playstyles, and I found the shoulder charge to be super useful early on taking care of regular enemies. In terms of leveling to optimize build, this game has the soft class system all Souls-like players are familiar with, where you can allocate stat points into strength, dex, health, all the usual offenders that allow you to customize your build. The one thing they did change in this system is a level up gives 3 points to be used for upgrades as opposed to the usual 1. With level ups being slightly more rare in this game, I think this was an excellent choice. There's also a respec system readily available, offering great flexibility to players as they choose their builds. So at any point, you can change from a lame intelligence build into the true strength bonk combat build I used for most of my playthrough. We'll talk more about the combat later, but I want to dive into the core of what I found most interesting: the elaborate crafting system and upgrade systems. Once you clear the first area and defeat your first boss, you unlock the town of Sacrament. This town acts as your hub. You have all your vendors and quests radiating out at this point. What makes crafting immediately unique is you can craft the entirety of the town. You can repair broken areas and unlock shortcuts that make traversal easier, or you can straight up upgrade vendors, which both expands their inventory and improves their stalls into actual buildings. It's a pretty cool feeling as you progress through the game and turn this dilapidated village into like a real center of commerce. Now you may be thinking, Ratty, that's cool, but how in the world did you upgrade that stuff? Good question. Throughout the game, there are tons of materials you can collect using tools. Pickaxes mine ore deposits, axes cut trees, fishing rods catch fish, and shovels dig up roots. Some things you can even just pick up with your hands, like flowers and berries. The ore and wood are what I initially used to upgrade Sacrament, but all these items have their place. You may have noticed I mentioned fishing, and roots, and berries. Well, this game really turns into a survival game when you look at the healing system. Rather than having some inexplicable magic potion that heals you on command, No Rest for the Wicked implements a system whereby foraging and collecting flowers and meat, you can cook meals that will heal you. In combat, there is a limit on how many you can use, so this isn't some infinite healing cheese, but the same is not true when you're exploring an area. One thing that really kept me hooked in this game was how they nailed the pressure and excitement of exploring a new area, and one thing that really solidified that was the healing system. It's awesome entering a new area with 30 bowls of stew ready to take on the world. But as you progress deeper into unknown territory and your supply dwindles, the nerves begin to mount. Will I be able to find my next whisper so I can touch it and save my progress? Am I going to run out of resources and lose it all? This happened to me dozens of times in my playthrough, and it really made gearing up and preparing to go to a new area an event all its own. I needed to gather my ingredients, repair my gear, and make sure I have everything as leveled as I can before I head off on my next adventure. The one last piece of crafting I'll touch on is the enchantment and rune system. There seems to be more enchantments than I can keep track of, and any base weapon can be randomly enchanted for free, which means there's no reason to not be trying it out. There did seem to be 2 types of enchanted weapons. These blue ones that came with a few buffs and are about what you'd expect, and then these purple plague weapons and armor. These actually had more enchantments on them, but they all had one debuff, such as increased stamina cost or more damage taken. I found this to be a really interesting give and take. You get a better weapon overall, but you will have to accept a debuff. There are also gem slots in weapons that let you add extra buffs to things like your health bar, stamina, and again, damage. I barely scratched the surface of this mechanic, but I can already tell this is something I'll be focused on in the endgame, as I try to craft the perfect armor and weapons. Along with enchanting is the ability to insert runes into weapons. There is a bar you can fill called the focus bar. Using focus, you can activate rune attacks, which are much stronger than your typical ones. Because I'm an ape, I was mostly focused on basic attacks and proper dodging, but the later I got into the game, the more I realized I needed something heavier hitting to take care of adds and bosses. This system also has a lot of depth, and as I keep playing, I'm excited to explore it more and see what kind of demented OP builds I can come up with. Now, I want to get a bit more into the world design. First things first, each area feels incredibly unique. The art style and dedication to world crafting in this game is insane. As you progress through the game areas, they get progressively more puzzly. Like initially, in Orban Glades, I just got to vibe and fight my way through the enemies. But towards the end game, in the Nameless Pass, I was pushing around towers and creating new paths that really emphasized the verticality the game has to offer. The world is also incredibly interconnected. I felt like at the end of each area, I was able to unlock a ladder or open a door I'd seen earlier that either returned me to Sacra or put me close by in the starting area. The fast travel in the game is limited to Sacra in whichever whisper you touched last. You can only TP to 2 spots at any given time. But due to the interconnectedness of the world and the need to be constantly gathering resources, it never felt like an issue to make a quick run if I needed to be somewhere else. This interconnectedness and freedom came with a few more interesting mechanics. For starters, the world evolves as you level up. Initially, Mariner's Keep was a level 1 area for me, with very basic enemies. However, when I returned there recently, it was a level 20 area with some legitimate threats that actually dropped good loot. The danger level system in the top right makes it easy to evaluate what areas to be in, but it also made me realize the world was leveling along with me, which keeps past areas relevant in farming gear and items. I want to expand a little more on the exploration while I talk about world design. I think a really smart decision was made when the devs decided enemies you kill in an area don't respawn when you die. They do eventually respawn on a generous timer, but it is very possible to fight your way through a section of the map, die many times, but eventually have everything dead and be able to freely explore, loot, and figure out the path forward. This is the reason that exploration manages to stay exciting rather than frustrating. You're incentivized to fight and kill everything, and it makes the actual act of journeying through new places so much more engaging. I honestly tend to get frustrated and just run through areas after a few attempts in Soulslikes. And being able to do that can make areas seem kind of boring and redundant outside of what bosses there are. In No Rest for the Wicked, I found myself, for maybe the first time ever, more engaged with the world and the exploration, and finding a boss was just very much a secondary objective. This just made me enjoy my playthrough way more, as I didn't really even have objectives. I was just getting dopamine from fleshing out the map and finding new items and enemies. I'm sure some people aren't like me and enjoy this aspect of games anyway, but I imagine this game will be very addictive for that section of the community. However, speaking of bosses, let's dive into what boss fights look like. After battling your way through some massive levels, you will eventually encounter these major enemies. In terms of the bosses I fought, the designs were awesome. The first real boss I found was Darik, and I had quite the rude awakening here. First off, spamming heals in boss fights is just not a move due to how the resource system works. Trading hits, or even just getting hit at all, is massively punishing, and taking a full combo pretty much ends an attempt. This is balanced out by the bosses having very learnable and set moves and combos that end with very clear attack openings. The emphasis on patience in these fights is insane. I'm used to kind of just being able to dodge and vibe and manage my healing to get through bosses, without necessarily learning the full move set. That was not an option at Darik. I had to really learn the ins and outs of this entire moveset, and when I did, the flow and feel of the fight was insane. It was like something just clicked after I got beat around enough, and the winning attempt was one of the most fun fights I've ever experienced. The last boss in the main story, the Riven twins, really upped the ante on this as well. Initially in this fight, I had to really work to problem solve each individual move. This fight was several hours of essentially learning exactly how I'm dodging and punishing this move. For example, the spinny move goes slow and fast. There's a hesitated dodge followed by an early dodge, and when he finishes, the break is long enough for a full attack combo. There's the same thing with this kick and slam attack. It was easy to dodge both, but by dodging behind them on the kick, I fully avoid the slam and can punish with a much longer combo. It was like climbing a mountain to learn this fight, and with limited heals, you learn to really optimize and take no damage to the early parts, so you can get to phase changes where moves are added to practice those. It's an incredibly rewarding system that is also deeply masochistic. This fight didn't give dopamine, it gave the feeling of relief and release that only comes from overcoming a truly violent and difficult boss fight. Oh my god. One last note here that's not as important. Bosses and enemies can have poise bars turned on or off in the settings. And this is just like a really nice quality of life mechanic I had to mention. After completing the main story, this early access game still has more to offer. In Sacred you can find the Crucible. I only messed around with this a bit, and I did it really early even though it's in-game content, because I'm just built like that. Essentially, you go through killing enemies in different chambers, and once you clear an area, you progress to the next one. Enemies drop currency that can be used to purchase echoes. These give all sorts of buffs that can change the gameplay and even allow you to skip chambers to progress faster and conserve healing resources. This distracted me from playing the main game for a couple of hours, and I even managed to reach the boss in Chamber 10, who quickly dismantled my hopes and dreams and made me realize I was not in fact built like that. Overall, No Rest for the Wicked is a game I'm going to be playing for quite a while, and I can't wait for the full release. The base building and multitude of crafting systems I've barely scratched the surface of will easily keep me occupied, as well as the continued updates the game is receiving. Speaking of updates, I had the privilege of playing the latest update, The Breach, a few days early, and holy smokes, does it add a ton to the game. There were 3 new major areas added, and the first one I tackled was Marin Forest. I was slightly underleveled, and I spent hours fighting an actual war to get through here. This area ups the puzzling and verticality of the previous areas. Every section of the map is blocked by these evil tentacle plague guys, and I had to find dire nettle spores hidden throughout the map to clear the way. I spent most of my time on the ground level, and then eventually found an entire section in the trees directly above where I'd been the entire time. It essentially doubled the size of the area and made me realize how much this was going to expand the size of the game. Eventually I made it through the forest and found Marin Village, which was a really creepy village filled with people hearing voices and songs calling them to the forest. Clearly something nefarious is afoot, and I'm excited to investigate this new hub further. After that absolute war to get to the village, I went to the Meadowlands, another new area in the Breach update, and it was the exact opposite. Where the forest was claustrophobic and filled with puzzles and verticality, and the constant need to double back and reevaluate routes, the Meadowlands were the polar opposite. Open, more traditionally beautiful, and most importantly, filled with resources so I could get more food. This was so refreshing and really made me feel the diversity that's emphasized in each area. Like, these 2 areas couldn't be more different, and both work incredibly well. There was also a lift from the Meadowlands all the way back to the starting area. Again, the interconnectedness and attention to detail just make exploring so much more fun. With all this said, I am in love with this game, and with the addition of The Breach, there's never been a better time to play. This update added not only these 3 areas I've covered, but also 3 new main quests, a ton of new story scenes and cinematics, a new in-game plague system that adds even more difficulty, 2 new weapon types and wands and gauntlets, 4 new campaign bosses and 9 new plague bosses, 12 enemy types, a variety of gameplay and system adjustments, and even a hardcore mode where dying ends the run for the highest stakes gameplay you can find. This game already felt massive, and with the Breach update, there's never been a better time to start playing No Rest for the Wicked. I really like this game, and I think you guys will too. So if you've at all been interested in anything I've said or shown off in the video, click the link down in the description and give it a try today. It bangs. Until next time, be good, be kind, adios.